About a month or so after the Ashby allegations were dismissed, you were then charged under the Criminal Code with the misuse of cab charges, and then the Daily Telegraph described you as King Rat, and it was on again.
Well, yes. I mean, you've just got to wonder how all of this has played out. I mean, you've got a situation where when Harmer lodged the Ashby complaint, there were salacious, sensationalist allegations which were later withdrawn. Ashby made some allegations in relation to cab charge usage in Sydney. I immediately released those cab charges, and it was obvious that there was nothing in those allegations, and those allegations were certainly not pursued by the federal police because clearly there was nothing in them. And yet there are a lot of things that don't quite add up. I mean, for instance, the Department of Finance has said that it did not refer the matter to the AFP, and yet on the 23rd of April, 2 days after News Limited broke the story, a senior officer of the Department of Finance, Greg Miles, was talking with the AFP when Ashby himself did not make his complaint to the AFP until the 26th of April.
Yeah, and see, this is important because under the Minchin Protocols, politicians essentially, if they make mistakes or whatever, if there are errors in their expenses, they can then declare that, pay it, time and time again, and move on. But if there is a reference to the federal police before that they get an opportunity to do that, then it can become a criminal matter. Now that's what happened in your case. Somebody went to the federal police. Have you any idea? If it wasn't James Ashby, who was it?
Well, it's very hard to know. I mean, in the federal court proceedings, when I had to represent myself, when my solicitors withdrew from acting for me, it was interesting that George Brandis's Chief of Staff sat in the back of the courtroom, and you've got to ask what interest would it be to the taxpayer to have George Brandis as Chief of Staff there. We've lodged FOI applications to the AFP and to the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions. We got a response from the CDPP which basically told us nothing. And in my request for an FOI to the AFP, I asked in particular, was there a complaint put forward by someone in the Liberal National Party of Queensland, the Liberal Party or the National Party, or was it Mel Bruff, was it Steve Lewis? And while the police are out of time in responding, we're told that they're going to give us a response next week. Now, whether that will include that information or not is still to be seen.
And why is this important to you?
Well, it really is important because I think this is a conspiracy designed to change the government of Australia and to destroy my political career. In fact, Justice Rare has made very strong findings and dismissed the Ashby action as an abusive process. And so it, I think, would be very useful to know who made that complaint. What really upsets me, though, is that the Department of Finance on the 23rd of April, 3 days before Ashby lodged his complaint, was talking to the AFP. I actually rang David Tune, the Secretary of the Department, at one stage, and I said, look, why, when the AFP contacted you, didn't you say that this matter is a sort of matter that it's normally handled administratively? And he said, oh, because of all the publicity, and that's the publicity that News Limited had, and incidentally, all of those reports were investigated thoroughly, and most were found to be entirely in order, and all that they sought to charge me for was $964, which is disputed. Now, I've made four further attempts. I wrote to the Department of Finance on 4 occasions with a view to having this matter dealt with administratively, but they used the excuse that because it had been referred directly to the AFP, they could not become involved. And I just find that I've been singled out. I think it's grossly unfair. And when you look at the fact that there have been numerous occasions where members have been able to repay disputed amounts, no questions asked, matter closed, yeah, I have to say, why have I not been afforded equivalent treatment?
We went through some figures between 2005 and 2010. 53 MPs repaid a total of $90,000, and none of them were charged. What do you make now, though, of this situation where MPs are getting into strife, and some of them still insisting that they're entitled to claim expenses for attending weddings?
Well, look, I don't want to comment on other members, but all I'm saying is that I think that in 2013, the Australian people do expect equivalence of treatment under the law. Now, I believe strongly that the charges against me should be dropped, particularly given the revelations that numbers of senior ministers have had to repay money in recent times, given the fact that Tony Abbott feels it's okay to participate in some sporting event at Port Macquarie because it's a marginal seat, and given the amount of money that he has in fact had to repay and the amount that he's refusing to repay, I think there's a double standard here. And I think one thing about the Australian people is they want people to have a fair go. And I think that either the charges against me should be dropped or everyone else should be charged.
How do you feel when